good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, this is season 4. So I do invite you to have a look at the 3 previous seasons. There may be some topics there that you can relate to with your reality today. So they are timeless. So I do invite you to have a look at those. And we're going to jump right in today. I have a great guest. This is a topic that actually started my counseling practice with trauma, particularly PTSD in my case. I have the great Tim Shurr with me, and he's going to be sharing some of his expertise as well as some great insight. I think we see eye to eye when it comes to helping people with trauma and or just changing habits and the little missing link that we have in most practices. So thank you so much, Tim, for joining me. I'm really glad that you're on the show today.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, before we get started with the topic, can you talk a little bit about yourself and tell us how you got to where you are today?
Well, I started out 37 years ago trying to find a cure for anxiety. You know, that feeling that something bad's going to happen, and it could happen at any time, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. I'd say it's like a fire alarm that keeps going off even when there's no fire.
Yeah.
And it causes us to have a huge amount of stress and worry, and it causes us to focus on what we're afraid of. So we end up going through life playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And when you play not to lose, it feels like you're losing even when you're not. And so I wanted to figure out how to feel peaceful, how to feel at ease, how to believe in myself, how to achieve goals. And I remember I was talking to a therapist early on, and he said, "Tim, you have generalized anxiety disorder." And I'm like, well, how do I get generalized confidence in order? You know, and so I spent my life trying to figure out the answer to that. And I think I found it. And I'm excited to share that with you today.
Oh, this is great. Yes, because it is anxiety is such a strange thing when you think about it, or you try not to think too much about it. But I remember
Mm.
uh, it was somebody, I needed somebody from the outside to tell me that I was actually experiencing anxiety because I just kept going and pushing through. And I was just, from the outside, I looked like a mess, but on the inside, I was fine. I was fine. And I kept saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just feeling, and somebody finally said, hey, it's anxiety. And I couldn't believe it. I work with people with anxiety and I couldn't see it
Yeah.
in myself. Um, I know that in your practice, you talk a lot about what blocks us in our behaviors. And I think we could maybe start with that. Or what I mean is changing our behavior. So, of course, when we're dealing with
Mm.
anxiety or any type of trauma, there's some behaviors we need to change, but we can only get so far and then we fall back into our old habits. So, um,
Yes.
what is it that we're doing or not doing that is creating that block where we can't seem to get ahead or move past it? Can you share a little bit of wisdom on that for us?
Of course. Yeah. It's a great question because, that's why they call them blind spots because we can't see our own stuff. We can be feeling it. We know that there's things going on. We can spot it in others very clearly, but it's harder to see within ourselves. That's why we need each other. And so a lot of people will come to me and they'll be having anxiety attacks or panic attacks, or they've got really bad habits and they can't seem to break them, or they just get up and they just have fear, right? They're just always afraid they're going to run out of time, they're going to run out of money, they're going to get sick, something bad's going to happen. And because uh, they have these beliefs running inside of them, that's what I figured out it really is. It's these beliefs, these mental rules inside of our mental operating system, inside of our brain or our subconscious mind, that keep trying to protect us. And the way that the brain protects us from perceived pain is by trying to help us pay attention to every bad thing that could happen, not to scare us, but to prepare us, right? So that if this happens, I'll handle it this way. But that's not what we tend to do. We tend to just worry about it and obsess about it. And when we go to psychology, or we go to therapy, or we go to YouTube videos, we're looking for help. A lot of times the tools that we're given can be helpful for a few minutes or a few hours, but then we go right back to what we were doing before. And I'd say it's kind of like cutting the top off of a weed. right? You got to get down to the root and pull it out at the root and then replace that weed with a flower, right? And so what we got to do is we got to find that belief that's driving the fear. And
Mhm.
so what I learned over all these years is that there's experiences that we go through growing up, and some of them are empowering and some of them are destructive, right? It all depends on how we look at it. The problem is that when we go through upsetting experiences or we go through what I call big T and little t traumas, our brain makes up an interpretation of what that experience means without our permission, without our
Mhm.
consent, and often without us even knowing that it's doing it, because our brain's always trying to make sense of everything that we go through. And so it ends up creating these beliefs when we're kids that I'm not safe, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough, or you can't trust people. And so we go through life with these hidden beliefs inside that I'm not safe. And so you're constantly trying to feel safe, right? Or I'm not worthy. And so you're constantly trying to prove yourself, right? Or chase validation, right? Or get people to like you, right? Or I'm not good enough. So you constantly find yourself, um, procrastinating or not going for what you want or sabotaging yourself in some way. You get a job interview and then you oversleep, right? Because you weren't really good enough to have that job anyway. And so we end up creating these self-fulfilling prophecies and we don't even know we're doing it. We feel like it's happening to us. And so we've got to figure out how to find those beliefs, upgrade them, and then upgrading them means you shift from going from I'm not enough to I'm more than enough. I'm not worthy to I'm more than worthy, right? I'm loved. I love me. God loves me, right? My family loves me. And so we have to upgrade these beliefs. And most people just don't know how to do that. And that's what I figured out how to do it. And I'm going to share it with you today.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a nice segue into the work that you do because you really, I love the visual that you give about just chopping the weed up at the top and not taking care of it at the root. Probably because I have to deal with a lot of weeds in my backyard right now. So I was actually
Yeah.
thinking about you the other day. I'm pulling weeds. I'm like, yeah, I got to fill this with good flowers. How do you
Yes,
work with
yes,
that? Because I know your work revolves a lot about rewiring the nervous system, because the nervous system has a really important part in all of this, especially with anxiety, but every
yes.
other habits that we may have developed. So can you walk us through a little bit what your framework and how you work with your clients?
Yeah, so your nervous system is responding or reacting to what you're thinking and what you're saying inside of yourself, or it's reacting to these unconscious beliefs inside. And
Mhm.
your nervous system will start to react before you even consciously are aware of what you're doing. Because it's not your conscious mind, it's your unconscious mind that stores these beliefs, these rules, and the fears, the habits. And so we'll often feel our heart beating faster. We'll start to feel like we're speeding up inside. We start to feel nervous, and we start to feel shaky, right? And that's just your fight or flight response. That's a system inside of you, a protection system inside of you that's trying to get you out of danger. You're going to have to fight or you're going to have to run away. And that's all it's trying to do. But sometimes it like has a hairline button on there. It just keeps getting triggered over and over again. That button keeps getting pushed
Yeah.
for situations that you don't need to respond that way. Everything will start to feel like an emergency instead of urgency or a catastrophe, right?
Mhm.
Because our brain, and we're not trying to do this. We don't wake up and say, today I'm going to really stress myself out. That's
You're
never the
right.
plan. Yeah. But if we have these autonomic systems and set up in place, if these habits, which are just, automated responses, they're set up like reactions. And so if it gets reinforced inside of you, it'll just keep that fire alarm will keep going off. So we've got to figure out how to disconnect it. Now you can use breathing techniques and journaling and stretching and walking and affirmations. But that again, if you don't change the rules, that's like having a bucket or a barrel and it's got a hole in the bottom of it. It doesn't matter how much water you pour into that barrel, it's just going to keep leaking back out. And so those techniques won't work until you seal the hole, until you seal the patch, right? And that's what we have to do. And we do that by upgrading our beliefs. And I can
Mhm.
teach you a couple strategies for how you can start to do that today.
Yeah, if you like to share, so people can put things into practice now to patch that hole, I think they would really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah.
So one of the things that you can do is you can ask yourself two questions. What would I have to believe to feel the way I'm feeling right now? and what would I rather believe instead? Okay, so
Hmm.
you look for the root cause. So let's say you're really stressed out about a bill that comes up. Okay, and how am I going to pay this bill? And then you start to get really worried, and then our mind starts going, what if I can't pay this bill? And then I don't have any more money coming in, and then they're going to turn my lights off, and then I won't make my mortgage, and then all of a sudden I'm going to be living on the street, and everybody's going to leave me, and no one's going to care, and I'm going to be all by myself alone, and then die. And that's a lot of times how we feel inside with anxiety. It takes us
Yeah.
to the worst possible case scenario. And so what we have to do is we got to ask ourselves, what would I have to believe to feel that way? I'd have to believe that, I'm not going to be okay. Well, what would you have to believe to feel that? And you just kind of ask the same question over and over, and you have this conversation with yourself. And eventually you get to the understanding that, well, I'd have to believe that I'm not good enough to be able to
Mhm.
figure this out. I'm not capable enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have what it takes, which means that I'm not enough. Okay. So when you go through life feeling like you're not enough at the core, which billions of people feel that way, it's the number one fear that we all have is the fear of not being good enough. And that's what drives the fear of rejection, the fear of success, the fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being humiliated, right? The fear of disappointment. All
Yeah.
of those fears that we have are being driven by this one foundational fear that drives all the insecurity, all the imposter syndrome, is that fear that I'm not enough. So then you ask yourself, what would I rather believe instead? Because you didn't choose that belief for yourself, right? We didn't just choose today. I'm deciding that I am not good enough, right? We didn't choose that. Our brain interpreted that. Other people might have told us that about ourselves or treated us in a way that made us assume that this must be true, but it is not. It's not a fact. It's an opinion, and you have the right to change your opinion anytime you want. And most opinions are updated as adults when we have more wisdom, when we have more experience, when we have more self awareness, when we recognize that we have the ability to choose what we want to believe about ourselves, others, or the kind of world we live in. That's when our beliefs usually are upgraded. And so it's so important that you have shows like yours, and congratulations on 4 seasons. That's quite an accomplishment because people don't know this. They're not being taught this at school, at church, in their homes most of the time. So where are they supposed to learn it? They're learning it here with your program, Danielle. So good for you. So we want to make sure that we ask ourselves, what would I rather believe instead? And then you can believe whatever you want. You might not believe it when you say it, but you can at least choose it. And most people really don't know the answer to that because they don't spend any time focusing on what they want because they're so focused on what they don't want. But you got to remember, people need to know that your brain works like a GPS. And when you want to go somewhere, you tell it where you want to go and it starts to take you there. Well, your brain works in the same way. But what we're doing is we're telling ourselves, I don't want to go to the post office. I don't want to go to the grocery store. I don't want to go to the movies. And so it's getting directions to the movies or the grocery store because that's what you're talking about. So when you say, I don't want to eat those cookies, I don't want to be stressed out, I don't want to procrastinate, it's going to make you do that because that's what you're focused on. So you got to focus on the opposite of what you're afraid of. What do I want? Right? I want to go to the park. Okay. Getting directions to the park. I want to know that I am enough, right? That I am worthy, that I am capable, that I can do whatever I put my mind to. And if I start telling myself that, I'm going to start looking at situations differently. It's going to cause my nervous system to activate my relaxation response, which will help you feel calm and give you the energy to then take action towards what you want because you have a new belief. So you can take new action and that'll start creating new results. And that's how you retrain your brain and your nervous system.
That's so powerful. And I'm just reacting as you're speaking, and some of the viewers may not see it, but all of the examples you're giving, it's like you're in my head, that internal dialogue that we keep having. And I really do appreciate you sharing that because it's so real and it happens so quickly in our heads. It's like a fraction of a
Yes.
second, you've had this entire unraveling of yourself, and sometimes we're not even aware of it because it's built into us. Um, I love how
That's
you
a good
said,
point. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We don't even recognize it. And something that will help people shift a little bit is move away from the terms positive and negative
yeah,
because that's how couples fight because one's always calling the other, you're so negative. No, I'm not. I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to protect us. And so it's a problem solving approach instead of a solution finding approach. So it's a little different. But I find that if you update the language and instead of positive or negative, think of it as useful and unuseful. So if you're in your car and you're stuck in traffic, is it useful to be yelling at everybody? Is it helping you feel better to be scaring yourself that you're going to be late and then all of a sudden everything's going to fall apart and you're going to be living in a van down by the river? That is not useful, right? You're not helping yourself in any way. So what would be useful? The
Yeah.
quality of your life is being determined by the quality of your unconscious beliefs and the questions that you ask yourself all day long. If you could just start to become more aware of the questions that you're asking yourself, besides what am I going to eat for dinner, right? Notice what you're really asking yourself all day long. Most people do not realize that they're talking to themselves like this and that they're asking themselves questions. What if I run out of money? What if I run out of time? What if I run out of love? What if I run out of opportunities? What if I run out of health? Right? What if I lose my marriage? What if I can't get this weight off? What if my kids don't talk to me anymore? I mean, we have all of
Mhm.
this fear and this stress with the what ifs, but
Yes.
scaring yourself isn't useful. Now, looking at situations and being proactive, well, how will I handle it? How can I handle it with grace? If I knew I was going to get through it, how could I show up then?
Hmm. I
Right?
love that.
If I knew God was on my side and right here with me and was going to help me through this, how could I show up now, this way? Right? So if you ask yourself a different question, it will force your brain to give you a new answer. And those new answers are going to be much more useful for you moving forward.
Yeah, that is so helpful. I love that. Just the change in the is this useful or, you know, not useful. It just your body
Mhm.
relaxes already just thinking about that as opposed to, negative, positive. I love that. That self-talk. I like that you brought up the fact that it was passed on to us with that I'm not enough because working with young children, I see it. You have a 2 or 3 year old, they're invincible. They're the best at everything. You put a 3 year old boy in a Batman costume and you got to make sure he doesn't jump off the furniture and hurt himself, right? So I like to keep that visual of what, when we were young, we thought we could do everything. We there was nothing stopping us. So yeah, it's something that was built into us with our experiences. So I do appreciate that you share that. I also wanted to ask you because I may throw you for a loop for that or put you on the spot for this one, but because you mentioned the little T, the big T, um, but everybody experiences that negative, that unuseful self-talk
Mhm.
or that
Mhm.
anxiety that surface up. Some people will downplay it when you try to share it with people and be like, "Oh, you got this, you'll figure it out, or you'll be okay," or don't be so dramatic. How would you advise people to block out that background noise because that adds to the okay, there's still something wrong with me. I'm still not good enough because I'm beating myself up and it's not that bad, that big a deal. It is a big a deal for you. So how would you advise people to handle that to block out that noise?
So it's a very good question. I feel like there's two questions in there. One is how do we turn the volume down so it doesn't feel so scary inside of us so you can manage it, right? And
Yeah.
then the second question is how do you deal with someone who doesn't feel like they're appreciating your feelings?
Right.
Right. Because a lot this happens in couples all the time. One person shares something with a level of intensity that causes the other person to want to shut down because they're not comfortable with that level of energy, right? And
Yeah.
they want to get away from it. And so when the person that's feeling that level of emotion feels the other person withdrawing or making it like it's not a big deal or you'll be okay and just blow it off and think positive, it causes the person with the intense feelings to feel like, no, you're not hearing me. I need to get bigger. I need to get
Mhm.
louder. I need to get more intense because you're not understanding how I'm feeling. And so you just keep having one person getting bigger and the other person withdrawing. And both people are doing the exact opposite of what they need to connect.
Right.
And that's why couples fight all the time because we have two very different strategies which we're supposed to have because that's how we balance each other out. And if we can
Hmm.
learn to communicate in a way that helps each other feel safe and heard and validated, I call it being loved. LUV, listen, understand, validate. Listen, understand, validate, love. Okay.
I
If you
love
can
that.
focus on loving other people, you're going to have a greater connection.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if you recognize that you're getting really intense, you've got to learn how to bring it back down for you, so the other person can fully validate you. And if you're someone who is the first sign of stress, you start bolting, you have to learn how to stay, right? You got to learn how to stay and be present and manage the intensity uh, without running away or hiding or shutting down or disconnecting. And so both people need to learn how to develop this inside of themselves. This is what growing is all about. That's why we're here to grow. So uh, so that's how you would work with somebody else. If they're saying that it's not okay, you could take that as a compliment because they see the greatness inside of you. They see how powerful you are. They see you're getting caught up in the situation, but they also know how amazing and powerful you are. So they know that you
Hmm.
will handle this and this too will pass. And they're just
Yeah.
reflecting that to you. Right? So you
So
could
true.
take it as a compliment. Yes, yes, thank you. I know I appreciate that, but I'm still feeling this way and I just want to talk about it and vent. And sometimes
Hmm.
people feel like venting is really good, and sometimes venting is not good because it depends on how you're venting. If you're getting it out to just talk about it so that you can then process it, find a resolution, and move forward, that can be very useful. Some people are venting though, and they're just saying the same things over and over. And what they're doing is they're reinforcing their fear,
Yeah.
right? They're giving it muscles. They're taking what they're afraid of and they're pumping it up. It's like a dog that keeps biting you and you just keep feeding it. Ow, you
Hmm.
bit me really hard. Let me give you more food. Right? By feeding you over and over and louder, every person, a new person, good. Let me tell you everything,
Yeah.
all over again. And that is destructive. That is not useful. That is reinforcing. You feel, yeah, but I got to get this out. That's not the way to get it out. You got to find the
Exactly.
belief inside that's driving that intensity and change the belief. And often
Yeah.
we need people to help us to do that. Like you said, it's hard to do it on your own. I've got my One Belief Away book that you can get that'll take you through the experiences. So as you read it, you're being changed, right? It's not telling you what you should do. It's actually upgrading your beliefs while you read it. So you can put that link in there. Reaching out to Danielle, if you're doing coaching is a great way of doing it. And then of course we can help you too. So,
Yeah.
but the point is that you need to get some help and support so that you learn how to manage the storms growing inside of you.
Yeah. That's incredible. Everything you're giving us is gold right now, but it's also transferable because you're talking about couples, but I see it working parents and child. If you're escalating, you're not creating that connection where you can
Hmm.
really attend to your child's needs. Even a
Yeah.
coworker, if there's stressful
Hmm.
situations at work, if you're seeing that it's escalating, there's something there that needs to be addressed. So that's what I appreciated. And I'm glad you mentioned your book because that was going to be my next thing as well. The One Belief Away has great tools for people to be able to expand on that, and there's so much more we could talk about, but with the time frame that we have, we can't always address it, but that book does give so many more tools that you can do to take note of what is triggering you, what work you need to work on, and then how you can show up for others, especially your loved ones, so you could be more supportive. I do appreciate you telling us all this because this is incredible. I could keep you on forever, but let's talk about the work. You've mentioned your book, but is there anything else that if people wanted to see your work, see how you work, where we could refer them to learn more?
Yes, yes. So for 25 years, I was a hypnotherapist and celebrity hypnotherapist, and so a lot of people knew me for the hypnosis part of it. And so I have a practice that I had built called Indie Hypnosis. It was built in Indianapolis, Indiana. So indyhypnosis.com. There's a lot of free tools, a lot of free training on how to use the power of your mind to create your life by design. And then you can get the One Belief Away book there, and it takes you through the exact exercises so that you're not trying to just use positive thinking to change how you're feeling. You literally go back to the time when the beliefs were formed, and you upgrade them, back then.
Mhm.
Imagine we could go back and have a conversation with the little girl or boy inside of us and give them tools that we might have now, or you'll get tools that you still don't have, and then you can give them to that little kid inside of you, and it just changes the game. And of course that's just step one, but the technology and the tools are so powerful. And so if you haven't got the results you want yet, check these out because they will change your life.
Mhm. That is so true. And it's just to get started, right? It's to take that leap and go for it. I'll be sure to add the links in the description box so people can have a look at the website and also to see where they can get your book. That could be very helpful as well. Uh, before we wrap up, I asked my guests this one question at the end, and I can't
Mhm.
remember if I warned you about it, but I'm going to jump
That's
right in.
okay.
I'm sure you'll be able to play along. But I do ask, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, that's funny. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a magician.
Uh,
Any way to entertain people, right? So that people could feel happy and feel peaceful inside. And I guess that's still what I'm doing right now, creating magic for people, just releasing them from their biggest worries and fears and help them to feel more happy and confident and successful and get away from achiever syndrome, this feeling like no matter what you get, it's never enough, right? So that you can move through life is what I call a peaceful achiever, right? Someone who has goals and goes after them every day and does it from a place of joy and peace, uh, and and so that you can share that with those around you, right? So that you can make the people that you live with feel loved and safe and supported, and they feel that way because that's how you make yourself feel. You know, you
right.
can't give what you don't have. So the more you take care of yourself, the more you're going to be able to take care of others, and then everybody wins.
Hmm. I love that. So I like asking that question because it's there's no wrong answer, right? It is just
It's
where
great.
you at, and we're constantly evolving. So it's nice to know what's ahead. I love that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
before we wrap up, I wanted to see, is there anything you would like to add or some more wisdom you'd like to share with us that we may haven't addressed yet? Is there anything that you wanted to add to wrap it up?
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned that was really important, especially for someone that was just riddled with anxiety and insecurity and in the past, right, is that it doesn't matter what shows up. What matters is how you show up, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what's going to happen to you. What matters is what you bring to the situation. So instead of being afraid that everything is going to happen to me, which is kind of like a victim mentality, we got to become the victor. You might have been gone through bad experiences, but those are experiences. You are the experiencer. You're more powerful than any experience you've ever had. So when you take your power back, you're deciding what you're going to bring to the situation. You're focused on, through using your questions and upgrading your beliefs, what kind of person you want to become and how would that person handle this situation. And then you start focusing on showing up in that way. It's a skill and you can develop it and you'll get stronger. And you're literally just one belief away from your next big breakthrough.
Yeah, I love that. That's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm, there's so much more we could talk about. We'll have to have you on again for another episode. I do believe you wanted to share something as well that as somebody that a download something that people could download or they could
Oh,
work with.
yes. If you need something quick, right? So I created this high performance switch, right? It's a 4 minute video or there's an audio version of it where I just take you through a real quick reset to help you to go from anxious to kind of get back into flow state so that you feel more calm, so you're more focused, so that you can actually do all the things that we're talking about. It's only 4 minutes, it's free. So we'll put the link in the show notes and you can have that. Just make sure that you're subscribed. You give this interview 5 stars and you share it with a friend so that more people can get these tools because it really, you can be part of the transformation and part of the change, which is always good.
Thank you so much, Tim. You would just make my work a lot easier. You're just plugging it in there for me. I really do appreciate. I thank you so much for coming on. You're giving us a lot of golden nuggets there that we can work with. And like as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's something we do need to talk about. Is there's not a lot of conversations. There aren't no conversations really going on about how we can do this. We know that there's ways of doing it, but what do we do when we hit that block and we can't push forward? So thank you again. I do. And anytime you want to come back on, you're more than welcome to.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. For everybody listening or watching, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, as Tim said already. And don't forget to go check out Tim's website as well. I'll put all the information, get his book, and also get your hands on that the gift that he's giving us today. So thank you again very much. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.